Good. Greetings from Ireland. My internet connection has started to become a little bit unstable, it says, but hopefully it will be okay for the next few minutes. So I'm happy to be part of this conference, Opposing Militarization and War. I'm joining on behalf of Shannon Watch and PANA, which, as most of you know, is the Peace and Neutrality Alliance, and we also work with the Irish anti-war movement here in Ireland. So others have mentioned the dangerous situation we're in now. Please, I'm sorry, my dog may be barking in the background, interrupting things, but... Yes. We've massive climate ecological challenges right now. We've governments who say they're powerless to change strategy right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic, even though, as Anne mentioned, some exercises were reduced. Our government is behaving like this as well. Here in Ireland, we claim to be a neutral country, but of course we don't behave like one. I'm going to speak about Shannon Airport, which operates as a US transit station to and from the Middle East, essentially. But I also want to note that Ireland has become actively supportive of the moves to create an EU army, which of course is linked to NATO. And this process appears to have been accelerated as a consequence of Brexit, which is something that's impacting us very significantly here in Ireland as well. Another point that I just want to draw attention to is the fact that the decision of what we might be called the moderate EU countries like ourselves here in Ireland to support war after war, especially in places like Libya and Syria, it's created a massive number of refugees, and many of those are seeking refuge or sanctuary in the EU. And the EU is not responding well, as the images and the reports from the Moria camp in Greece demonstrated recently. So our campaign in Shannon has two key parts, basically. We welcome refugees and we oppose militarization. So we've just produced an information sheet which on Shannon, which I'm going to share with you if I can here. Let me just check if this works. I hope you can see that. The US military operations in Shannon Airport. So Shannon is on the west coast of Ireland. We have US troop carriers. We have military planes landing regularly. The numbers have dropped slightly this year. So we haven't succeeded in removing the US military from our airport, but we're of the view that our ongoing visible and vocal opposition to their presence has had an impact. We make it more difficult for them to be at the airport. So at least they're not taking it over completely. We also believe actually that if we didn't maintain an ongoing campaign to emphasize neutrality and to oppose militarization in Ireland, that it's likely we'd be in NATO by now, and thankfully we're not. So yeah, our information sheet just starts with some quotes. Let me just try and move down to them here. And one of them, the middle one there, is from one of our members of Parliament, Mick Wallace. Along with another member of Parliament, he attempted to inspect a military plane at Shannon a few years back. And they did this because the authorities don't do their job. They don't check for weapons on the planes that are landing. Our government claims that there are no weapons on board the military planes. Surely nobody believes that. I mean, the US Air Force don't travel without weapons. Some of the aircraft we've seen land at Shannon could only be described as airborne weapon systems themselves. So we maintain regular monthly demonstrations at the airport. We had to stop for a couple of months because of COVID-19, but we're back now. And we have some members of the Green Party joining us. But I mentioned that because right now, the Minister for Transport in Ireland, who signs off on permits for weapons on board the troop carriers, as opposed to the US military planes, is the leader of the Green Party in Ireland. Now, thankfully, in the last couple of weeks, one prominent former member of that party who has a very significant young following on social media has joined our campaign. And that's just the type of energy and enthusiasm that we need. So we're very happy to have her on board. So if I just move down through, and I'll make this information, I'll send you a link to it. It's 4 pages long, but I'm not going to go through all of the points on it, but I do want to just touch on a couple of them. October 2001, so that was the date when the airport was effectively handed over to the US military, and their use of it has been going on since. Let me see, what else have we got? So February 2003, I think it's, if I can find it here, yes, we're back up here. It was worth noting that 100,000 people were on the streets in Dublin opposing war. And of course, the peace movement has never been able to reproduce those numbers since. In fact, quite worryingly, we find now that the far right are the ones that are mobilizing people more and more. They're anti-immigrant, they're racist, they're violent. And of course, racism is fashioned and it's produced through warfare. So we oppose both. Let me move down a little bit here to April 2006. And I want to highlight this because it was around then that we got to know that the CIA rendition planes were landing at Shannon Airport. And there's irrefutable evidence of this, but it has never been investigated. So for us, accountability for complicity in torture and for the human rights abuses and for the war crimes that are associated with the US military transit through Shannon Airport is quite critical. So let me move on here to March of last year, 2019 as well. 2 US veterans for peace were arrested going onto the runway to inspect US military planes. And the 2 men, Ken Mayers and Tara Kauf, whom are good friends of many of you here, and particularly of Anne, I'm sure you know them well. They were held in Ireland for 8 months before they were allowed to go back home, before their passports were returned. They'll have to return to face trial. In fact, they want to do that. They're more than willing to put their case in a court of law here in Ireland. We have also got 4 other peace activists who are awaiting trials for similar actions. 2 of them, the trial of 2 of them actually, Colin Roddy and Dave Donlan, is due to start next week. But it's starting 4 years, over 4 years after they took their action. May 2016, they entered the airport. So, okay, at the end here on our fact sheet, we have some figures. We have some numbers for the number of planes that have been going through the airport as far as we can ascertain through the research that we do. You know, it's not as significant in terms of the numbers as a lot of the military bases around the world, but it's still significant insofar as a supposedly neutral country, Ireland, is facilitating US aggression around the world. And of course, the other important figure that's on the right there is the numbers of people who have died as a result of all of this. Quite a tragedy of immense scale, even greater in terms of the numbers that are attributed to COVID-19. You know, US militarization continues to kill people, continues to displace people from their homes and from their communities. And we have to keep making the argument that the jobs and the business at Shannon are not worth the lives lost and the suffering of the people that are being displaced from their home. And it baffles us how difficult it often is to make that argument, even though it appears very clear to us. The other thing, just to finish, that I want to mention is that we're connecting with others now in the environmental and the climate justice movement. And one example is a campaign group that's opposed to the importing of US fracked gas into Shannon. as well, just beside the airport. So our campaigns are tackling two of the biggest, the most urgent environmental threats at this time. And we're trying to do that together, to join the dots and to work to achieve climate justice and to end the levels of militarization that are happening around the world together. So that's a quick update from Ireland and from Shannon for you all. As I said, I'll put a link in the chat to this information sheet, and thank you for the opportunity to participate again. So back to Berlin.